Did you know that some of Europe's most beautiful cities are on the verge of collapse? In 2023 alone, there were nearly 3 billion overnight stays in the European Union, and many more if we consider the whole of Europe. Overtourism is wreaking havoc on some of the continent's most beautiful destinations. Some cities are on the verge of becoming open-air museums, where the local population is being pushed out, and housing costs are skyrocketing, making it harder for locals to live in their own cities. Today, we're going to dive into 10 European cities that are being severely impacted by overtourism. Make sure to share in the comments other destinations you know that are struggling with this issue. Let's get into it. Venice, Italy. Venice is often the first city that comes to mind when we think about overtourism. Living in Venice has become almost impossible due to the overwhelming number of tourists that flood the city every year. In fact, every year, about 1,200 residents leave Venice. That's more than 3 people per day. The heart of the city is being devoured by the tourism industry, transforming it into a luxury dormitory filled with resorts, vacation homes, and second homes. The result? Venice is becoming less of a vibrant city and more of an open-air museum. A clear example of this is how tourists often ask locals, "What time does the city close?" As if Venice were nothing more than a tourist attraction. Locals are frustrated. The influx of tourists has led to the city becoming more chaotic and polluted. Did you know that around 50 million plastic bottles are sold every year in Venice? A large portion of them end up in the streets or even worse, in the canals. Efforts are underway to combat the effects of overtourism. Visitors to Venice now have to pay an entrance fee of €5, and starting in August 2024, the city will be limiting the size of tourist groups to 25 people. Guides will also be banned from using loudspeakers. Additionally, cruise ships, which have caused environmental damage by getting too close to the shore, are now banned from approaching the city. Amsterdam, Netherlands. Amsterdam is another iconic European city grappling with overtourism. The city has already taken significant steps to address the problem, including banning cruise ships. Currently, 190 ships are allowed to dock at the passenger terminal Amsterdam, but by 2026, this number will be cut in half, with a maximum of 100 ships allowed to dock. By 2035, no cruise ships will be able to dock in the capital at all. But the problem in Amsterdam goes beyond just the number of tourists. Many visitors are drawn to the city's red light districts and cannabis cafes, which perpetuates a certain image of Amsterdam as a city where anything goes. In response, the city launched the Stay Away campaign, which aims to discourage disruptive behavior. For example, if you search for terms like Amsterdam bachelor party or pub crawl Amsterdam on Google, you'll be shown ads that highlight the risks and consequences of excessive drinking and drug use in the city. Santorini, Greece. It's not just the big cities that are affected by overtourism. Smaller towns and islands like Santorini are also feeling the strain. Santorini is famous for its stunning white houses and breathtaking views, but its small population of 15,500 residents is often overwhelmed by the influx of tourists. In 2024, the island welcomed over 17,000 visitors every weekend during the summer season. In 2023, Santorini saw more than 3 million tourists and 800 cruise ships visit its shores. The president of the municipality of Fira, the island's capital, once posted on social media, asking residents to stay indoors to avoid the overwhelming crowds, though he later deleted the post. This highlights how extreme the situation has become. In response, authorities are now limiting the number of cruise ship tourists to 8,000 per day. There's also a push to stop the opening of new accommodations, both large hotels and short-term rentals on platforms like Airbnb, to control the number of visitors. Paris, France. Paris, often regarded as the city of love, has a complicated relationship with tourists. It's a top destination, attracting over 15.5 million visitors in 2023 alone. While tourists bring economic benefits, they also contribute to a range of problems, including rising housing costs. Many property owners prefer to rent their homes to tourists for short stays rather than long-term residents, which exacerbates the housing crisis. Paris isn't the only French city dealing with the effects of overtourism. Etretat, a small coastal village, became a tourist hotspot after being featured in the popular Netflix series Lupin. The town's population is just 1,200, yet it sees up to 10,000 tourists a day during the high season. This massive influx of visitors is threatening the village's iconic cliffs. Another famous French destination, Mont Saint-Michel, is grappling with what's called hit-and-run tourism, where visitors arrive in large numbers but only stay for a short period. During the high season, the island sees up to 36,000 tourists a day, putting immense pressure on its infrastructure. The French government is monitoring the situation closely, but experts argue that more data is needed to properly manage the crowds. Hallstatt, Austria. Hallstatt, a picturesque village in Austria, has become another victim of overtourism. Its inclusion on the UNESCO World Heritage List and its resemblance to the town in Disney's Frozen have drawn millions of tourists. In fact, a replica of Hallstatt was even built in China, showing just how much tourists adore this small village. But Hallstatt's residents are not as fond of the crowds. With fewer than 1,000 inhabitants, the village receives over 1 million visitors each year. This has led to residents putting up banners reminding tourists that Hallstatt is a place where people live. Anti-selfie barriers have been erected, and parking has been limited to accommodate no more than 350 cars and 40 buses a day. Previously, as many as 90 buses would arrive daily, adding to the chaos. Barcelona, Spain. In July 2024, thousands of Barcelona residents took to the streets to protest against overtourism, carrying banners with messages like, "Barcelona is not for sale and go back home." The protests were largely driven by the sharp rise in housing costs, which have increased by 68% over the past decade. To tackle overtourism, Barcelona's mayor has proposed increasing taxes on cruise ship passengers who stay in the city for less than 12 hours. She has also announced that by 2029, licenses for over 10,000 apartments currently used for short-term tourist rentals will not be renewed. Instead, only traditional hotels and bed and breakfasts will be allowed to operate. In another effort to combat overtourism, a bus line in the city was removed from Google Maps in April 2024 because too many tourists were using it, preventing locals from accessing public transport. Rome, Italy. Rome, one of Europe's most iconic cities, has also been transformed by overtourism. An Italian journalist once described the city as having turned into a gigantic amusement park, where tourists overrun the historic center, often disrupting daily life. One of the most heavily affected monuments is the Spanish Steps. Made famous by the 1953 film Roman Holiday, the steps are now a hotspot for tourists who have caused significant damage over the years. In 2016, over $1.68 million were spent to restore the staircase, and today, sitting on the steps is strictly prohibited. Violators can be fined up to $448. The Colosseum is another monument that has suffered due to overtourism. Some visitors have stolen pieces of the structure, while others have vandalized its ancient walls. Efforts are being made to protect these historic landmarks, but the damage caused by overtourism is undeniable. Dubrovnik, Croatia. Dubrovnik, Croatia, holds the unfortunate title of being the world's most crowded city due to overtourism, according to the State of Tourism and Hospitality 2024 report. The city has a population of just over 41,000, but welcomed nearly 1.5 million tourists in 2019, resulting in a tourist density of 36 visitors per resident. Noise pollution is another major concern, and the city council is considering implementing new measures, including a luggage deposit system at the entrance to the historic center. Additionally, street musicians, bars, and restaurants must adhere to strict noise limits during evening hours. Despite these efforts, the number of tourists visiting Dubrovnik is expected to increase by 70% by 2030. Athens, Greece. Athens, a city rich in history, welcomed 7 million tourists in 2023, but the sheer number of visitors is changing the city's landscape. Neighborhoods in the historic center are being transformed as locals are pushed out due to rising housing costs. Some areas, like Kukaki, have been almost entirely taken over by short-term rental properties, making it difficult for residents to find affordable housing. In response, Athens has introduced a daily visitor limit at the Acropolis, one of the city's most famous landmarks. Only 20,000 visitors are allowed each day, divided into 3 time slots. This measure may be extended to other archaeological sites across the country, as the Greek government works to address the challenges of overtourism. Iceland. We'll conclude this list not with a city, but with an entire nation, Iceland. While Iceland has not yet experienced the full negative effects of overtourism, it is at risk of suffering the same fate as other European destinations. In recent years, Iceland has become one of the most popular tourist destinations in the world, largely due to its stunning natural landscapes, including geysers, volcanoes, and glaciers. In 2023, the country saw over 2 million visitors, which is a staggering number considering that the local population is just around 370,000. The impact of tourism on Iceland's natural environment is becoming increasingly apparent. Fragile ecosystems, particularly around popular tourist spots like the Golden Circle and the Blue Lagoon, are being damaged by the constant influx of visitors. The government has had to close several hiking trails and restrict access to some areas in an attempt to preserve the country's natural beauty. To address these issues, Iceland is considering a range of measures, including introducing stricter regulations for tour operators and placing caps on the number of visitors to specific attractions. Some officials have even proposed limiting the number of tourists who can visit the country each year, in a bid to ensure that Iceland's natural wonders remain intact for future generations. Additionally, like in other parts of Europe, the housing crisis is a growing concern. In Reykjavik, the capital city, short-term vacation rentals are causing rental prices to surge, making it harder for locals to find affordable places to live. The government is now exploring tighter regulations on Airbnb-style accommodations, which are increasingly dominating the local housing market. Conclusion. Overtourism is reshaping some of Europe's most iconic destinations, pushing local communities to the margins and placing enormous pressure on cultural and natural landmarks. While tourism can generate economic prosperity, unchecked growth risks transforming vibrant cities into mere tourist attractions. It's essential for governments, businesses, and travelers to adopt more sustainable practices to ensure these places thrive for generations to come. As a traveler, you can make a difference by visiting off-season, seeking out lesser-known destinations, and being mindful of the local environment and communities. It's about enjoying the beauty of a place while preserving it for the future. If you're looking for a destination that offers beauty without the overwhelming crowds, explore our video where we reveal the wonders of Hungary. Discover the hidden treasures, stunning landscapes, and unique cultural experiences that make Hungary a must-visit. Don't miss it.